Hello everyone, this is Baylor, and in this video I thought it'd be interesting to show an application that I'm actively developing and working on. And my intentions are that maybe you can learn something from this, but if you see anything that you think I could improve on, that you can share your knowledge. I may make more of these videos in the future if this is something y'all are interested in. This particular application is Rails with React and TypeScript. And then I'm introducing event sourcing with the gem Sequent, this gem here. And so I thought I'd show how I'm implementing this. So this is early on, and I thought it would help now if I showed it so that you could actually see it. And so this UI, this is for tracking the inventory of products being made. And those products every day when this company is making something, they're associating it with an active work order. And so the inventory tracking is that I can go in here and I can say this is for a particular work order, like so, and then I can add the product that I've made that's associated with these two. So I might have a canister set, and I can say that I've made 30 of these today or whatever. And so this, I thought it'd be interesting to share the way this whole component works that loads all this data here. What it's actually doing is it's a label that looks like a form input. And so I did this with Bootstrap by simply adding the form control class. And then I added just a little bit of CSS to say that like when I focus on this input, you'll see I add the focused class to this label, which gives it the border and the box shadow to make it look like an actual input that I can type in. And then I'll show you some things that I learned from that. And doing this tagged input is that this is the component that we're working with here, that we're looking at. And you can see that on focus on blur, I'm changing the state of this. And then you'll notice that I'm binding to the key down event. And so when I hit the backspace key and my current input is an empty string, then I'm just removing the last item off of the array here with slice. And so that makes it so if I hit backspace here, it deletes the item, and that just kind of has a very natural feel. And as soon as I added it, it changed the whole feel of this whole custom component or input. And then likewise, I'm using Downshift to draw this popover here. So if we look at this, I didn't mean to fill it in, but when you see all these items here, this actually comes from Downshift, and so it already understands enter. So I just bound to tab, comma, and semicolon as well. And when you hit any of these commands and we know the state, it's a valid case, so that like if I hit tab here, it should go to the next one. But if I have a value or the popover open, I hit tab, then I expect it to autofill, right? So it has that two-way, what does tab do here? What's the valid case? And so having this check here was important. Yeah, the interesting piece with this is that when we register Downshift, we said the selected item is null. And what that means is that when I reset Downshift, now when I fill in a value here, you see the input goes back to an empty value. We're resetting that input, so we do that on change. Likewise, we also register the work order we just got by appending it to the end of our items. Unless we already have it. So like if I type in 103 here and try to do it again, it doesn't do anything. So we're not duplicating. That's basically everything that was interesting about creating this custom component. But I thought I'd also share, I actually learned this from Kent C. Dodds, who created Downshift. He actually created a functional component. I actually don't know what you call this. It's not functional, but it's a component that returns a function as its child. And what this allows is this fetch work orders component. It takes in the value of our as we're typing, and it loads data. And instead of this component understanding how to render data, all it does is it understands how to fetch the data, and it gives it back to us in a functional component, or as a function with our state of loading and the work orders as an array. And the way this works, it's super simple. Inside of your render function of this fetch work orders, in this case, all we do is we just call children as a function rather than us doing something like return a div with this .props.children, right? We just change it to actually call children as a function, and we pass in the data that we're working with. And so now I can use this fetch work orders on any other place on the application, and I don't have to worry about trying to change the UI for rendering it differently. And then this other part is that once we add that product as it goes down here, when we save this, we're sending up to the server with just this basic data. And as you can see, it's an array with just 3 hash items. And something that was interesting here is that because I'm using Sequent wants an aggregate ID. And what I decided to do here is I'm loading the product based on that product ID, and then I'm calling toGlobal ID to string. And so what this global ID is doing is it's kind of like a GUID, except it's actually written out as a URI here. And so when you have this global ID as a string version in Rails, it gives you the namespace of your application, the class name of your entity or your object or record, and then the ID. And by using this fancy magical string, you can relocate the object that you originally worked with this global ID locator. And to me, this is the coolest thing, because with event sourcing, the whole idea is that you are never working with an existing object, right? You never actually have an object. You are creating those objects by reading the event stream. And because I'm working with an existing application, I can't really do that, and I don't want to migrate everything to event sourcing. And so what I thought is, but using this GUID, you still have the same idea, because event sourcing says your ID should be a GUID. But instead of actually using the GUID structure, we're actually using something that we can translate back into our Rails app. So I thought that was neat. And I think that covers it. The only other thing I would show is that using Sequent here, the way I've done this is I have this domain directory here. And inside of this directory, I have the actual domain objects that I'm working with. And one thing that I do here is I have like my aggregate roots, I have my commands, my events, which as you can see, there's only one of each. Something that I added is I created this Sequent Rails gem that has a series of generators on it. And so I may push this out to the internet at some point, but the real goal of this, I'll show it to you. Like, if we look at what this gives us by just running Rails generate or G without any args, Rails will show you everything. And so we have, like, we can generate a command handler, an event, and a command. So if we do this, Sequent Rails, and we'll generate a new event here, or actually we'll just do a command. And let's say that we want to, instead of track handling the quantity of pluses or additions, we'll just say like, let's just like reset quantity. And the way this works, we have our product inventory, and we're resetting the quantity here, and we'll just force it to have the vendor ID, which is an integer, and yeah, that's all. So when we run this generator here, as you can see, it goes in and it creates this new command. It creates a unit test file, and it adds it to our command handler. So if we take a look at this, let's close these files. So you can see we have these new files through the reset quantity command. It pulls in the attributes for our vendor ID that's an integer. It adds the validation for Sequent commands. In our command handler, it did not add a line break like it should, but you can see that we have our reset quantity command with our placeholder. And if we take a look at the spec file, you can see that it does some simple things like it makes sure that it's a Sequent command. It makes sure that it has the attribute vendor ID with a adder writer. And then also that if we create our command without any attributes, that we get our default vendor can't be blank from our validation. And so I'd like to thank you for watching this video, and in the future I'll probably go through more of how I added these generators, but for now I think this video is getting long enough. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any suggestions, or if you know anything that you want to talk about, how this might be improved or how this has helped you, please leave it in the comment section below and like this video, and I'll see you next time.